This a story that will make y'all think twice before ever saying, "Oh, cool, let's watch the storm outside." Because trust me, some things are meant to be watched from a safe and dry location like, I don't know, your house? So this happened back in 2017. It was early September, and our story takes us to Sequoia National Park in California. Now, if you've never been, imagine a place with giant trees, peaceful lakes, and just nature being all kinds of beautiful. It's the perfect place to take your family on a nice little getaway. And that's exactly what Christopher Lovera decided to do. Christopher was all about spending quality time with his two kids, Aiden 12 and Nadia 9. So he packed up the car, loaded up the camping gear, and off they went to the great outdoors for a fun little trip. Now at first, everything was going great. You know, classic camping stuff, roasting marshmallows, telling ghost stories, maybe trying and failing to set up a tent properly. Life was good. But then nature decided to spice things up. A thunderstorm started rolling in. Now, most of us would take one look at that and say, okay, time to get inside the tent. Or better yet, hop in the car and drive somewhere safer. But nope. Christopher and the kids? They thought, hey, let's watch the lightning show. So they did what no weather expert would ever recommend. They found a nice cozy spot under a tree. A tree during a thunderstorm. Now, I already know what you're thinking. That's literally the worst place to be during a storm. And you're absolutely right. But hey, in the moment, I guess it felt like the perfect front row seat to nature's fireworks. And then, bam! A lightning bolt, moving at about a gazillion miles per hour, struck the exact tree they were sitting under. And not just a little spark, not just a tiny zap, no. Full on, straight from the sky, power of the gods lightning bolt. And just like that, all three of them were knocked out cold. Yeah, unconscious, just lying there on the ground. Now, can we take a second to think about how crazy that is? Like, imagine you're just chilling, watching a storm, and then suddenly blackout. The last thing they saw was probably a bright white flash before everything just went silent. Some hikers nearby must have seen what happened because help came pretty fast. Paramedics rushed to the scene and found Christopher, Aiden, and Nadia all lying there, completely out of it. And when they woke up, you can only imagine the confusion. Blinked a few times, looked at his kids, and was like, what just happened? And the kids? Probably looking back at him like, Dad, we almost died. They were rushed to the hospital and miraculously, yes, miraculously they survived. But they didn't walk away completely unscathed. They had burns from the lightning and their bodies had just been through one of the most intense shocks a person could experience. But hey, at least they got to tell people, yeah, I've been struck by lightning and lived to talk about. Can you imagine the street cred that gives you? Like you walk into a room and someone's bragging about how they broke their arm in a soccer game, and you're just like, oh, that's cute. I took a direct hit from the sky. Instant respect. So stay safe out there, y'all. And if you ever feel the urge to sit outside during a lightning storm, don't. Just don't. And maybe download a good weather app while you're at it. This is one of the wildest stories I've ever heard, and trust me, it's 100% terrifying. So, a bunch of friends, young, dumb, and full of beer, out camping in the middle of nowhere. You know the type. Coolers full of cheap drinks, terrible campfire singing, and at least one guy who insists he can start a fire with just 2 sticks, but ends up using half a bottle of lighter fluid. Classic. Anyway, as the night goes on and the drinks keep flowing, one of them, his name is Jake. So Jake had this brilliant idea. He looks up at the full moon, takes a deep breath, and just lets out this long, dramatic howl, like full-on werewolf. At first, everyone busts out laughing. It's stupid, it's hilarious, and obviously the only logical thing to do is all start howling like a bunch of lunatics. So they did. And man, they are into it. Echoing through the trees, scaring off whatever poor animals were trying to sleep, just peak dumbass behavior. But here's where it gets weird. Right after they stop, the forest goes dead silent. Like, no wind, no crickets, just stillness. Now, even if you're not an outdoorsy type, you know silence in the woods is never a good sign. And then, they hear it. A howl, but not from one of them. From out there, in the dark. At first they think, oh cool, we got a wolf to answer back. But then there's another howl, and another, and another. Until suddenly, from the tree line just beyond the glow of the campfire, they see movement. Now keep in mind, these guys are still tipsy, so it takes a second for their brains to catch up. But once it does, panic sets in real fast, because standing there, barely visible between the trees, are wolves, a whole pack, watching, listening. And that's when it hits them. They didn't just make noise, they called. And the wolves? Well, they answered. At this point, everybody just freezes. Nobody is breathing, nobody is moving. They're all just staring, and the wolves are staring back. One of them swears he can hear the low rumble of growling, but he can't tell if it's real or just in his head. And remember Jake, the genius who started all this? Yeah, he's sitting there with his beer, looking like he's about to cry. Minutes pass, or maybe it's seconds, nobody really knows. But at some point, the wolves seem to decide these dumb humans aren't worth the trouble. One by one, they turn and fade back into the trees, their eyes disappearing into the shadows. And just like that, it's over. The second the last wolf is gone, everybody lets out this huge breath, like they've all been holding it the whole time. Nobody says a word, they just sit there, processing what just happened. And that is how a bunch of drunk idiots almost became a midnight snack. So, it started on October 10th, 2024, and Dustin, 35 years old, decides to go on a solo camping trip near Big Sky, Montana. Dude just wants to enjoy the great outdoors, breathe in that fresh mountain air, maybe roast some marshmallows, the whole nature experience. He picks a spot along Moose Creek, a nice quiet place where he plans to spend the night, and the next day he's supposed to meet up with his friend, but until then, it's just him, his tent, and the wilderness. So, on October 12th, Dustin's friend finally makes it to the campsite, probably expecting to find him chilling by the fire or still asleep in his tent. But nope, what they actually find is way worse. Dustin is dead, and not just oops, fell off a cliff, dead. Something bad happened there. Now this is Montana, so the first thought everyone had was bear attack. Makes sense, right? Big old grizzly rolls through, things get ugly. But here's the thing, when wildlife experts show up, they don't find a single sign of bear activity. No claw marks, no bite wounds, no tracks. It's as if a bear wasn't involved at all. That's when they did an autopsy and boom, plot twist. Dustin didn't get mauled, he got chopped. Multiple deep wounds, and whatever did it was sharp, real sharp. Or like, this wasn't some freak accident where he tripped onto his own hatchet. Somebody did this to him. And just like that, Dustin's camping trip turns from a nature getaway into a full-blown murder investigation. Now, at this point, the Gallatin County Sheriff's Office is on high alert. Sheriff Dan Springer steps up to a press conference and straight up tells everyone, someone was out there who killed someone in a very heinous way. And listen, when a sheriff starts using words like heinous, you know things are bad. They start searching for clues, but the area's super remote, hardly any cell service, barely any security cameras, just miles and miles of open wilderness. But then, finally, a break in the case. Investigators find a beer can near the campsite. Seems pretty normal, right? I mean, it's a campsite. Who doesn't bring beer? But here's the kicker. The DNA on that can, not Dustin's. That's right, guys. There was a mystery guest at the crime scene. Turns out that DNA belongs to a guy named Darren Abbey. He's 41, been living in the area, working in Big Sky, just going about his life, except apparently when he's out in the woods committing murder. So, on October 26, police track him down and arrest him. And here's where it gets crazy. When they bring him in for questioning, dude just confesses. Like no dramatic chase, no courtroom drama, just, yep, I did it, and that's it. Dustin Curesom went into the woods for a peaceful camping trip and instead walked straight into a horror movie. This story happened to a kid. Let's just say, after this, he probably never went camping the same way again. So, this boy, a little dude, about 8 years old, out on a family camping trip. You know how kids are, right? Full of big ideas, even bigger egos, and absolutely no sense of self-preservation. His family sets up their tents, but this kid? Nah, he's got other plans. He doesn't want to share a tent with his sister. No way. That's lame. He's an explorer, a survivor. He's Bear Grylls Jr. So he tells his parents, I'm sleeping outside tonight. And they, for some reason, just let him. They probably figured, what's the worst that could happen? Spoiler alert, a lot so. They set up his little cot right under the open sky, surrounded by nature, just him, the stars, and a completely false sense of security. The night starts off amazing. The sky is clear, the air is crisp, and our young adventurer drifts off to sleep, probably dreaming of saving the world, or discovering treasure, or eating an endless supply of ice cream. You know, typical kid stuff. But then, bam, something wakes him up. A sound, a sniffing sound. Now, waking up in the middle of the night outside is already unsettling enough. But when you crack your eyes open and realize there's a giant, breathing, sniffing creature inches from your face, yeah, that's a whole different level of nightmare fuel. So, the kid opens his eyes, and what does he see? Not a bunny, not a squirrel, a massive freaking bear. Right there, right next to him, sniffing his head like it's a freshly baked pie. Now, I don't know about you, but if it were me, I'd have screamed, passed out, or somehow both at the same time. But this kid, he freezes. He doesn't move a muscle. His brain goes into full, if I stay still, maybe it won't eat me mode. And honestly, good call. So he just lays there, stiff as a board, heart hammering, eyes probably as wide as dinner plates. He's basically a human popsicle at this point, just hoping and praying the bear gets bored and moves on. And after what feels like forever, the bear does exactly that. It sniffs a little more, then just wanders off. No big deal, just another Tuesday for the bear. Meanwhile, this kid is still lying there, probably questioning every decision that led him to this moment. By now, the adults in the camp have woken up. They hear movement, they step outside, and boom, there's their 8-year-old still frozen in place, looking like he just saw the face of God. They rush over, grab him, and shove him into his sister's tent so fast you'd think they were stuffing a turkey. Suddenly, that sister's tent? Best place in the world. The rest of the night goes on without any more unexpected visitors, but let me tell you, this kid, scarred for life, the whole sleeping outside thing, never happening again. And honestly, can you blame him? So, a young man, his name is Liam, decides he needs a little break from life. So he packs up his stuff and heads out to the woods in northeastern Ohio for a nice, peaceful solo camping trip. Just him, nature, and the sound of leaves rustling in the breeze. You know, real man versus wild vibes. For the first 2 nights, everything's cool. No creepy noises, no wild animals sniffing around, just the stars above and the crackling of his little campfire. It's actually pretty relaxing, until that 3rd night. Now, this is where things get weird. Sometime in the middle of the night, Liam wakes up. Nature's calling, and unfortunately, there ain't no bathroom in the woods. So, he gets out of his hammock, stumbles a few feet away, and right as he's about to do his business, he notices something. A tiny flickering light way off in the trees, a headlamp. Now, at first, he's thinking, okay, maybe there's another camper out here. But then, it hits him. He hasn't seen another soul for miles. And what kind of person is just wandering around the woods at 3 a.m. with a single headlamp? So, he watches. And this light, it's moving, slowly, almost. Like it's looking for something, or someone. Now, you know those moments when you can't just mind your business? And was like, oh, let me go investigate the weird light in the haunted wood. And guess what? Liam does exactly that. He throws on his boots, grabs a hatchet because you never go unarmed in a horror situation, and starts moving toward the light. And as soon as he steps further into the woods, he notices something. There isn't just one headlamp, there's a second one. And this one? It's a lot closer, like 40 feet away close. And the way it's moving, it's not just wandering like a lost hiker. No, this one is moving with purpose. Like whoever is holding it is taking slow, careful steps, like they know he's there. At this point, Liam's fight or flight instincts kick in, and he does the smartest thing he's done all night. He drops to the ground and hides under a pile of leaves. He stays as still as humanly possible, barely even breathing, just watching. And that's when he sees the person. This dude, whoever he is, stops walking, stands there for a second. Then the guy lights a cigarette and just casually drinks a beer in the middle of the woods at 3 a.m. And for a split second, the glow of his cell phone lights up his face. But Liam? He can't make out much, just a shadowy face with no expression. Now Liam's just lying there, completely frozen, hoping this guy just smokes his cigarette, finishes his beer, and moves along. But nah, because this is the part where everything goes from, oh, that's creepy, to, nope, I'm out of here. From his hiding spot, Liam suddenly hears a ripping sound. His tarp. Someone, maybe this guy, maybe someone else, is tearing apart his campsite. Then, flashlights start flicking on and off. He hears things being thrown, bags being opened. By the time he finally gets the nerve to peek out from his hiding spot, his whole campsite is trashed. His backpack, gone. His rain gear, gone. His mess kit, tossed all over the place. And scattered around his camp, empty beer cans, chew pouches, and an empty bag of powder. Meth. Yep, meth. At this point, Liam's done. He stays hidden, waits until it's completely silent, and then went in the opposite direction, leaving everything behind. He hikes straight out of those woods, not stopping until he reaches the safety of his car. To this day, he has no idea who those people were or what they wanted, but he's sure of one thing: those headlamps, they weren't lost hikers, they weren't campers, they were watching him. This is one of those stories that'll make you question every decision you've ever made about camping in the deep woods, especially if you thought, yeah, let's go somewhere totally isolated where no one can hear us scream. So, a guy named Simon and his dad decided to go on a father-son camping trip deep in the Alabama woods, somewhere like Conecuh National Forest. Now, if you've never been there, let me paint you a picture. The trees? So thick you'd think they were in a competition for who could block out the most sunlight. The kind of place where if you hear a twig snap behind you, you're immediately convinced something's watching. You know, real horror movie vibes? Now, Simon and his dad, they weren't first-time campers. They'd done this before, knew all the basics, set up camp before dark, keep the fire going, don't wander off like some clueless horror movie character. They were just there to relax, roast some marshmallows, and enjoy the peace and quiet. Except peace and quiet is not what they got. It was late, their campfire had burned down to nothing but glowing embers, and they were about to crawl into their tent when, out of nowhere, this long, drawn-out moan echoes through the trees. Now, at first they do what any sane person would do. They ignore it. Probably just the wind, right? Maybe an animal. Nothing to freak out about, until they hear it again. Louder, closer, and then a third time. Now, I don't know about y'all, but 3 times? That's the universal sign to get the hell out. But no. Simon's dad? Oh no, he's one of those let's check it out kind of people. He grabs a flashlight, and Simon, poor guy, grabs the only weapon he can find, which happens to be a hefty stick. Because, you know, if you're gonna face some mysterious moaning creature in the woods, a stick is obviously the best defense. So, against all logic and horror movie warnings, they head toward the sound, leaving the safety of their campfire glow behind. The trees close in around them, the darkness feels thicker, and I swear at this point, even the crickets stop making noise, like they didn't want to be part of whatever was about to go down. They follow the sound up a small hill, hearts pounding, and then, boom! Lying there on the ground, barely moving, is a woman. Now let me tell you, Simon said his heart nearly jumped out of his chest. At first, he thought they'd walk straight into a horror movie plot, like she was about to sit up all creepy-like and start crawling toward them or something. But nope. Turns out she was just really, really drunk. Like, lost in the woods, completely out of it drunk. She was mumbling, barely able to sit up, and clearly had no idea where she was. How she even got there? No clue. So now, instead of a ghost or a monster, Simon and his dad are standing over a random wasted woman in the middle of the woods at night, just chilling there like some forgotten extra from a party that ended 5 miles away. Now, you'd think that'd be the weirdest part of the night, but no. The real question was, where did she come from? Because they sure as hell didn't pass any other campers on the way in. Simon's dad, trying to piece things together, asks if she has a campsite. She mutters something that might have been a yes, so they help her up, guide her through the dark like some weird, unofficial search and rescue team. And sure enough, after a lot of stumbling and almost falling, they finally find her campsite. It wasn't too far off, but still way too far for someone in her state to have wandered on her own. They left her there, made sure she was okay, and then practically power walked back to their own tent. But let me tell you, neither of them slept that night. Because the whole time, Simon couldn't stop thinking about one thing. What if she wasn't alone? I mean, someone had to have been camping with her, right? And if they just left her like that in the middle of the woods, where were they? Or worse, What if she hadn't been the one making that sound? Yeah, let that sink in. And honestly, if it were me, I would have slept in the damn car. So next time you're out camping and hear some weird noise in the woods, maybe don't go investigating. Or, at the very least, bring something better than a stick.